All right, let's get right into it. I want to start today with just a single number.
18. Now, what do you think that number means? It's not a birthday, it's not a year, it's an amount of time. Just 18 hours.
8 people gone in just 18 hours. And no, this isn't the plot of some thriller movie. This actually happened. It's one of the darkest chapters in modern history.
Okay, so let's set the scene. We're in South Korea. The date is April 9th, 1975, and the country's Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, sentences 8 men to death. You'd think that's the end of the legal road, right? The final word.
Well, what happened next it's just unbelievable. Not even a full day later, less than 24 hours, all 8 of those men were executed. The ink wasn't even dry on the court documents. There was no time for appeals, no time to say goodbye to their families, no time for anything. And that insane speed, it forces us to ask one really, really important question.
So, were they actually guilty? What could they have possibly done to deserve being rushed to their deaths like that? To get to the bottom of this, we have to start with the story the government wanted everyone to believe.
So, let's talk about the government's official story. You have to remember, this was an authoritarian regime under Park Chung-hee. They couldn't just execute people without a reason, right? They needed a really good one. So they just made one up.
The official charge was designed to be terrifying. It was called the Inhyukdang incident, or the People's Revolutionary Party incident. The government claimed these 8 men were dangerous North Korean agents, communists, who were plotting to overthrow the entire state. Think about it. In a country that's technically still at war with the North, that's the scariest story you can possibly tell.
And boy, did they sell that story. They used everything they had. The newspapers, which were all state-controlled, just blasted these headlines about a massive threat to the nation. The TV and radio amplified it, talking about this huge, dangerous conspiracy. The goal was simple: make the public afraid of these men. And honestly, with no other information available, most people had no choice but to believe it. But the whole thing, it was a lie, a complete fabrication.
Right, so let's jump forward a few decades, because slowly, piece by painful piece, the truth starts to come out. And what it reveals is that this wasn't just some mistake, a simple miscarriage of justice. No, it was something so much darker. Just look at the difference between what they claimed and what actually happened. The official story was that these were dangerous spies who confessed to everything. The reality? They were just regular people, a poet, a teacher, a guy who brewed beer, and they were brutally tortured until they signed whatever was put in front of them. The state said they had all this evidence of a plot. The reality? The only evidence they had were those confessions beaten out of innocent men. This wasn't a legal process. It was just a show, a performance where the state had already decided the ending.
And this is maybe the most horrifying part of the whole story. The judiciary. The courts. They're supposed to be the one thing that protects regular citizens from the power of the state. They're meant to be a firewall. But in this case, they didn't just fail to do their job. They actively took part in the crime. The court literally stamped its approval on their deaths.
So you see, this wasn't a mistake. It was a system, a process. You could even call it the anatomy of a judicial murder. It's a terrifying 3-step recipe. First, the state makes up a lie. Second, the people in power use that lie to get what they want, more control. And then, the third and most tragic step, the court comes in and makes the lie official. They give it the force of law. And the fallout from that? It lasted for decades. Because for the families of these 8 men, the day of the executions wasn't the end of their nightmare. For them, it was just the beginning.
I want you to just try and imagine this for a second. Your father or your husband is publicly executed as a national traitor, a spy. And for the next 30 years, you aren't treated like a grieving family. No, you're treated like the family of a spy. You're shunned by society, you're constantly watched by the government, you can't get a decent job, all while dealing with this impossible, crushing grief.
That's the real, devastating power of a lie that comes from the state. It's like a poison. It doesn't just kill the 8 men it was aimed at. It seeps into everything, destroying the lives of their wives, their kids. It shatters entire families for generations. The wounds are just unbelievably deep. And when justice finally came, it was way, way too late.
32 years. Think about that. For 32 years, these men were officially considered traitors in the history books.
It took until 2007 for a court to finally look at the case again and declare them innocent of everything. An entire generation had gone by.
So you might be wondering, why are we digging up this painful history from 1975? Well, it's because this isn't just a story about the past. It is a powerful, urgent warning for all of us right now.
So yes, the final verdict was not guilty. But can you imagine that moment? It wasn't a celebration. It was just this heartbreaking confirmation that the state itself had committed a crime. That verdict couldn't bring anyone back. It couldn't erase decades of suffering.
And that's why this story is so important today. It forces us to ask some really tough questions. Like, who is the law actually supposed to protect? Is it there to protect us, the citizens, from the powerful? Or is it there to protect the powerful from us?
And think about this. When a government goes rogue, when it decides to lie and torture and even kill its own people, who's supposed to be the one to step in and stop it? In any real democracy, there's only one answer: the courts.
Which leads us to the final, and maybe the most chilling question of all. Is a trial always about finding justice, or can it be twisted into just another tool for power? A stage where the government just acts out a play to justify a conclusion it already made.
And that, right there, is the heart of it. The big takeaway. You can tell how healthy a democracy is by looking at its courts. If the judiciary is independent and has integrity, democracy is strong. But when the judiciary collapses, when it just does what the politicians tell it to do, democracy collapses right along with it.
So this story, the Inhyukdang incident, it's not just some old tragic tale from Korea. It's a living warning. It's a lesson for every single one of us, in any country. It shows us exactly what happens when the law, the one thing that's supposed to protect us all, fails in its most basic duty.